Hello everyone, welcome to the 7 C's of Leadership course. My name is Daniel Dravick and I'm interviewing your instructor, Coach Mike Jarvis. How you doing today, Coach?
I'm blessed, thank you.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about the 7 C's of Leadership book and what inspired you to write it.
Well, first of all, let me just mention the 7 C's and then I'll tell you how it all came about. 7 C's of leadership are: number 1 is confidence, number 2 is courage, number 3 is character, number 4 is commitment, number 5 is communication, number 6 is community, and number 7 is coach. And the C that encompasses and covers all of them is Christ. You asked me what inspired me. I think a long life. I've been blessed with longevity. Right now I'm 72. I'll be 73 very soon. In fact, by the time this course starts, I'll be 73. And all my life, I've been in a position, pretty much of leadership. Starting as a little boy, as the catcher on the Little League baseball team, playing sports as the point guard, the leader of the team. And actually, when I was a youngster playing basketball, and I was going to see the Boston Celtics, I fell in love with a coach by the name of Red Auerbach, who was the leader of the Boston Celtics. And leadership has always intrigued me, not just as a player, but as a coach, as a parent. And I've had so many great people. One of them I'm going to talk a little bit about today, my mom, who was an incredible leader. But what really, really inspired me was when I got to study more and to learn more about the greatest leader who ever lived, Jesus Christ, and what it really meant to be a leader. Of course, he was a perfect leader. None of us can be that. But there's so many lessons that he has taught us. And he developed a playbook called the Bible. And all of his leadership principles are in there.
Wow, that's amazing. So when you talk about the C that encompasses all the other C's, Christ.
Right.
When writing this book, what was it like for you to really see all of those C's that we talk about, the 7 C's of leadership, through the lens of Christ?
It was, it's so difficult to even talk about. I mean, it was incredible. It was amazing. I was born and raised as a Catholic. I went to church, thought I was, a pretty good person. But I really never really understood what Christianity was all about and why, God sent his son here to earth for us. But as I learned more and more, I realized that, there was so much more that we need to know and that we need to basically be equipped with in order to basically not just survive, but to thrive and to lead our families and to lead our communities and help to lead this country.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I know you've written a couple of other books before this one. You've written The Skills for Life with Jonathan Beck, and you've also written Everybody Needs a Head Coach with Chad Bonham. How does this book, The 7 C's of Leadership, compare to those 2 books you've written in the past?
Well, in some ways, there are similarities. In other words, to be a really good leader, I believe you have to have really good life skills. You have to know how to communicate with people, get along with people. You know how to dress properly. I mean, there's so many things that you need to learn. So you need good life skills. Everybody Needs a Head Coach basically was a book that was inspired on a trip that my wife and I took, following the footsteps of the Apostle Paul through Greece to Israel. And I met many Christian men and women, leaders, and they encouraged me to basically write a book. They wanted me to write an autobiography, but I didn't feel like I wanted a book about me. But I ended up probably doing the next best thing. I wrote a book that basically has 23 stories. And what makes the book special, Everybody Needs a Head Coach, is my stories, as personal as they are, were then related to biblical stories. And then we had questions and, key teaching points similar to what we're doing with the 7 C's that people could now grow and learn from. So the 7 C's really is an outgrowth and sort of like takes all of those elements from the previous 2 books and sort of brings them now home because of the fact that, we're talking, now it's even more Christ-centered.
Wow, okay, so there are some similarities in this book, the 7 C's of
Yes.
Leadership book, compared to the last 2 that you wrote, and also some differences, it sounds
Yes,
like.
there's a lot of differences, but there are the commonality more than anything else is me. And the thing that I hope that anybody taking the course and reading the book will be able to do is they'll be able to take themselves and put themselves into the stories. In other words, the stories I wrote, most people are going to be able to identify. They're human basic things that most of us do and think and maybe don't do. So people are going to be able to put themselves into the book. They're going to be able to actually get in here and play the characters.
Okay, so speaking of the student getting into the book,
Yes.
in the introduction of the 7 C's of Leadership, you mentioned the foundation of the book being rooted in a biblical worldview of truth.
Truth.
Now, that may sound really foreign to a lot of students.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that really means to you and why that's important?
Well, we now live in a world that there are very few absolutes. We live in this politically correct culture where people now have basically been led to believe that it's okay to do as you think. Anything goes, everything goes, and if you don't like something, then don't worry about it. It's okay if you do it. The reality is that's not the way that God designed. This is not the God design. I mean, God is an orderly God. God put together rules and regulations that obviously most of us would never live up to, but there are absolutes. It's almost like if I coached basketball and I said, okay, we're not going to use the boundary lines anymore. We're going to go up in the stands and throw the ball around, or we're going to count a 2-point shot even if it doesn't go in the basket. That's what our society has done. Our society basically has said, I'll make the rules. I'm going to do what I feel is comfortable to me, and I guess if I do it long enough, other people are going to say it's okay and it's going to become acceptable. But the reality is that the truth is the truth, and the truth is in the Word. And I mean, the Word is God, God is the Word, and it's absolutely true. And you can't take pieces and parts of it and say, I'll accept this. If you are a true Christian, you accept it all of God's Word is the truth.
The truth and the whole truth.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. So truth not being relative, truth really having clear lines, clear boundaries, in the example you mentioned with the basketball court.
Yeah.
In the book, you mentioned that one of the truths is that God doesn't call the equipped,
Right.
but He equips the called.
Right.
What does that mean, and how did you arrive at that truth?
Well,
Equip the called.
Well, what that means is what we do is we look, for me, it's like I look at not only my own life and how I personally, no one would have imagined that I would have become a leader of any team. Okay, a little chubby kid running around trying to find some kids to play with to play a game, and most of the time without any success. But when you get into the Word and you see that God takes ordinary people, in fact, some people that would be considered to be less than ordinary, and He uses them in an incredible way. Abraham, for example, is going to be the father of our nation at 100 years of age. Moses had a communication problem. He was a stutterer. And when he told God, hey, listen, I can't go and talk to Pharaoh. I mean, and he's stuttering. God says, don't worry, I'll take care of it. You'll have your brother with you. We'll get this done together. David, he was a murderer, an adulterer. So God takes very ordinary, sometimes even less than ordinary people, and he equips them. He gives them the confidence, which is one of the C's, the courage, to basically to go and do battle and to get the job done, knowing because whoever that person is, if they believe in him, they know that he is with them all the way. So the equipment, really more than anything else that he gives you, is himself, and he's with you, and he's going to help you get through it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
All right.
I actually wanted to backtrack a little bit to what you said earlier about growing up. No one would have expected you to become this really prominent coach that you have become. 45 years of experience coaching at George Washington University, St. John's University, just to name a few. Why is that? How is it that people back in the day when you were growing up didn't see that in you? Why didn't they expect that from you?
Well, I probably, it's funny, it was a long time before I even started to see it in myself. But I think basically, once again, most people, like for example, back in my neighborhood, the guys that they would have thought that would have gone on to have careers in coaching, they would have thought would have been the more athletic players. I mean, I was the short, I always refer to myself as a little fat kid. I was the chubby kid. I wore husky clothes. I didn't run fast. Was not, for a long time, I mean, I really kept to myself quite a bit. And so people, they just wouldn't have looked at this ordinary, less than ordinary kid and even thought that someday, number one, he would ever leave the city, that, it was back at a time when there were only a couple of guys that I grew up with that went to college, so I don't think most people thought that I'd ever go to college, let alone someday get an honorary doctorate degree from South Florida Bible College, to go along with the other degrees that I have. So people, once again, I think they stereotyped me, put me in a box, and figured I'd never get out of that box.
Yeah, God called you.
God called me, and God presented me with some incredible opportunities, some incredible players to coach and teach, like Patrick Ewing, and he equipped me with, by giving me some great teachers that taught me how to teach, and they always made sure that, I got a position that, number one, I was ready for, and even if I wasn't, he was going to help me, have the confidence and the courage to be able to just learn what I needed to learn so I could be successful. And I sometimes have to pinch myself. I mean, it's really amazing what God can do.
Wow. Well, who would you say was probably one of the most influential individuals in your life that helped cultivate that perspective of you being that leader, of you being called by God to fulfill that leadership position?
I wish I could name one. I mean, the first person, the greatest leader I knew ever was my mom. And I think we're going to talk about her a little bit as it relates to commitment. But
yeah,
it started with my mom. It really did. And then I had an incredible support system. My mom had great assistance in her daughter, Trudy. And Trudy taught me that, that it's all good. Just like the Apostle Paul, count it all as joy. And, with Trudy, no matter what happened, there was a lesson to be learned from it. So she taught me that the only time you lose is when you don't learn. I got that from my sister. My brother, Richard, he was such an encourager. I mean, and he was the guy that made it possible. I mean, he worked so that I could play. He helped support the family. And he took me to my first games, and he taught me the first time, I think, he bought me my first basketball. He bought me my first catcher's mitt. So my brother Richard, I mean, my family was incredible. And then I had some great teachers. I mean, I had a great college coach. And Coach Dukeshire, he was one of the best fundamental teachers. He taught me how to teach. And he basically taught me how to lead a basketball team.
Okay. So The book did mention in the introduction especially about your mother.
Yes.
Your journey as a leader actually may not have even occurred if it weren't for her.
That's right.
It also mentions how she was a shining example of commitment.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit, what was one of your favorite memories of your mom being committed, of demonstrating that commitment?
Well, I'm gonna share a story that actually my sister shared with me that I didn't even know, okay, until we started doing this book. And I was talking with my sister Trudy, and I said, tell me a little bit more about some of the things that Mom did. And Trudy told me, number one, my mother, there were times when she would feed us. We never missed a meal, but there were times when she didn't eat so that we could. But the story that I remember most about my mom, my sister Trudy was a young girl and she got scarlet fever. And she was quarantined in the Children's Hospital in Boston. And my mom worked in Cambridge. And my mom didn't have an automobile. So my mom would finish work around 4:30. She would walk to Central Square, which was a couple of miles from her job. She would take a train from Central Square to Park Street in Boston, and then take a trolley from Park Street to the hospital. So it would take her about an hour and a half to get to the hospital. She would get to the hospital, and my sister now was quarantined, so my mother could not go into the hospital to see her. So my mother worked out a deal with the nurse, where the nurse would bring my sister to the window, hold my sister in her arms, and my mom would stand underneath a light post, and she would wave for 45 minutes to my sister. I can't tell that story without, it affected me, and she did that for 6 months, 7 days a week. Okay, so give me a minute to
Yes.
to compose myself.
Yes.
But I mean, if you couldn't love that lady and respect her, you couldn't love anybody. So anyhow, please, real men cry.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a small wonder why you think about
Yeah.
it, especially about commitment.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. All right. But it's a tough story.
Yes.
But I think anybody that's listening to this and anybody that takes this course, whether they had a mom that did that, there's somebody in their life that did something special. Okay?
Okay.
I'm about ready.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So,
Okay.
in the book, you also stated that it's more than a self-help book.
Yeah.
What makes the 7 Seeds of Leadership more than a self-help book?
Well, I think first of all, self. And that's part of the problem. That's part of the reason why we need this book. It's not about just oneself, even though in order to have a good team, I was taught a long time ago, there's no I in team. So, when you think of self, you're thinking of oneself, you're thinking of one. It's a team game. And leadership is about the team, it's about the community. That's another C, by the way. And that community incorporates God's first team that he put together, which was man and woman getting in the institution of marriage. That was the first team he ever established. So, it's about a team, it's about a community, and it's not about the individual helping himself. It's about me or you as an individual, anyone taking this course, being better equipped to be able to help our team, which means our family, our school, the South Florida Bible College, or whatever college it is, and the greatest country in the world, the United States of America.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's so countercultural to think about the team be more community-oriented than the individual, right? We live in America, we're supposed to be more individualistic
Yes.
than anyone else, more self-oriented, more self-reliant, but yet your book really emphasizes, like you mentioned, that one of the C's is community.
Right.
You also make a, I think, countercultural point when you mention how everybody is called to be a leader.
Yeah.
Culture actually categorizes people into either leader or follower. You're
Right.
either a leader or a follower, you're either one or the other. And they claim that not everyone is a leader because then who follows who? And there has to be someone to lead, there has to be someone to follow. Tell us a little bit about that cross-cultural or countercultural point you make of everyone being called to be a leader and why everyone should see themselves as a leader.
Well, whether you're at the front or at the back or in the middle, there's a job to do. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the greatest leaders are the most reserved and quietest people. Sometimes you don't even have to speak to lead. You can lead totally by example. A couple examples. I'm driving down the highway, and all of a sudden I hear these fire engines going off, and now this fire engine's coming past me. And I look at the fire engine, and there's the driver in the front, there's a couple of guys in the middle of the fire engine, and then there's another guy with a steering wheel in the back of the fire engine. So is the guy in the front leading the fire engine any more valuable than the guy at the back? Because if the guy at the back isn't in a position of taking a position of leadership, even though he's at the back of the fire engine, that fire engine may never get to its destination. And it's just like a team. Sometimes the greatest leaders, are those somewhere in the middle, because in order for anybody to take the team on to victory, other folks have to say, okay, I'm going to be willing to follow. Jesus Christ, the greatest servant leader that ever lived. So in order to lead, you have to also serve, which means sometimes you have to take a step back and allow someone else, and I look at, like, for example, you see the birds going from the north to the south, and they form a V, and the one bird leads for a while, and then all of a sudden he goes to the back and another bird takes the lead position. And there are times when, you may not be the designated leader. Like, for example, when I was in college, normally a basketball team has 12 to 15 players. The first 5, then the second 5, and then the third 5. I was on the third 5. I was like the captain of the third team, and all we did was play defense. And anybody who's played basketball will know what I'm talking about. The guys considered me to be the leader of that team, and they came to me to advocate with the head coach. So even though I wasn't at the front, I was almost at the back, I had a leadership position, and that taught me a long time ago that you don't have to be the guy out front giving all the commands to really be the leader of a team. In fact, one of the examples my wife always gives me is the crabs in a barrel. And I don't know if this is in the book or not, but the crabs will reach up and pull that person at the top down. You've got to have crabs, I guess, that are willing to maybe hold that position to keep that person up top. So leadership is from the beginning to the end of the line, period.
What does it mean to follow the leader?
It means you've got to sacrifice. It means sometimes you just have to give a little bit more of yourself than you might even want to. And I at times have had a difficulty doing that. And it's another reasons why I wanted to write this book, from the perspective of there are things that I've done that I know I can teach people, and there are things that I didn't do as well as I should have. And there were times, seriously, when I was not a very good leader from the rear. And I think that's true with a lot of folks. So it's very, very difficult sometimes to take a position that of maybe being not at the front of the line when you know you could be, but you also know that you have to do that for the success of the team. And it's about the team, it's not about the individual.
That makes a lot of sense. So leadership is not so much about your position in the moment,
right,
but about being others oriented. I like the example you mentioned of the birds, of
yes,
how each bird rotates and
yes,
how each role is crucial, demonstrating at one point in time a follower and at one point in time a leader.
Yeah.
But everyone takes their turn.
Yeah, and the other thing that's so important for everybody to understand is we go back to God equipping us. God gave each of us different gifts, different abilities, different skills, different talents. And, to have a real team, the leader has got to recognize that different people have different talents and can perform different roles. So now it's up to the leader to coordinate and incorporate all those different people, and to take those individuals, just like I would try to do as a basketball coach, and just like Red Auerbach taught me when he was coaching the Celtics. You got to have different pieces in order to be able to really create a great puzzle.
Okay.
And once again, I'll talk a lot from, using coaching analogies, because that's what I did my whole life.
Perfect. And they're very helpful.
So, good.